Hello, this is Guy Grant, your Spring Hill, Florida realtor, and I'm coming to you today with some of the practice changes that are being required by the implementation of the NAR lawsuit settlement. So this is the actual lawsuit settlement. It's 109 pages long. I've read most of it, but the real nuts and bolts here are where it goes over practice changes, and that's what I'm going to address. One of the biggest changes is to the listing agreement. This is the original listing agreement that we used to use. For all my examples, I am going to use a $100,000 house, 6% brokerage fee, split 3% and 3%. Obviously, everything's negotiable. So, but on the original listing agreement, you would put 6% in here of the purchase price. That was compensation. And then you would come down here and the cooperation and compensation with other brokers, the 3% would go down here. So it was 6% total up there and 3% down there. Been that way for quite a while. So they have come out with they made changes to the listing agreement, and the compensation now, this is compensation for the broker, and there's two ways to do this. You can put 6% up here, and then down here, the seller will authorize the broker to offer compensation to buyer brokers in the amount of the 3% would go down there, so that would be very little change. Or you can put the 3% up here, and come down here and check this box and say the seller offers the broker to offer compensation from the seller. So the seller would pay the buyer's agent directly. It's all going to come out in closing, so this is really just wording, but you have to understand what it says, because you don't want to put 6% up there and then come down here and check the wrong box and put 3% in down there, or now you got a 9% listing agreement and nobody wants that. So the other possibility is the compensation, no compensation to be offered to buyer brokers. And I've already gone over why I don't believe that's a good idea. 75% of houses sell for 15% down or less. That means buyers are struggling to get their down payment and closing costs together. They don't have any extra money to be paying the buyer's realtor. So that's why you still savvy sellers are still going to offer buyer's agent compensation one way or the other. I am leaning towards doing the first one, just because that kind of keeps things the same, and because on the there's two other forms. One of where you got to pick one of these, and it's either compensation agreement seller to buyer broker, seller's broker to buyer broker. This is the one that I want to use because the buyer's name is optional, because you don't know who the buyer is going to be yet. So and the seller doesn't have to sign this one, so try and make things easy for the seller. Whereas if you do this one, this requires the seller to sign this, and come on, keep going. There it is. All right. And you don't know who the buyer is yet. So I really think this is going to be the way to go. So, and the reason that these are necessary is because one of the other changes is that before I'm allowed to show anybody a house, they have to sign a buyer broker agreement, which is either the exclusive buyer broker agreement, which is not specific to any house, but the type of property would be, say, single family house anywhere in Hernando County. That would obligate a buyer to work with me for, any house. Or you can use what's called just the showing agreement, which means, okay, I'm going to show you these three houses. This showing agreement only applies to these three houses. If you end up, you don't like me, you don't like these three houses, you want to go work with somebody else, this one's the no harm, no foul one. It only applies to these three houses. So I'll probably be using the showing agreement. I did another video on this, the difference between showing agreements and exclusive buyer-broker agreement, but I think this one will probably be the one that gets used the most. But either way, before a buyer signs a contract, they're going to want to know that the seller is picking up, one way or another, that the seller is going to be paying for their brokerage fee. And that's where these forms come into play. So most companies are going to be putting their buyer agent compensation on their website. It's no longer allowed to be on the MLS, which to me would be the most transparent way to do it, but part of the lawsuit said can't be in the MLS. So, okay, great. So everybody's going to be putting it on their own website, and everybody will probably show houses. They'll check on the website and say, okay, yes, the seller is offering compensation, or the seller's agent is offering buyer's agent compensation, so the buyer won't get stuck with that fee. But before they write an offer, they're going to want to see the compensation agreement and to make sure that, you know, that's not a typo on the website, because just like everything in the MLS, all information is deemed reliable but not guaranteed. This is going to be the form that guarantees that the buyer won't have to pay the buyer's agent, that the seller is picking up that tab one way or the other. So I hope that's clear. I kind of rushed through this a little bit, but these are the changes that are coming into effect. And everybody needs to be aware of it. There won't be any more showing houses without having one of these buyer broker agreements signed, either the buyer broker or the showing agreement. And that's all the extra paperwork that got added because of this. So, as always, if anybody has any questions, please get a hold of me. And if there's anything I can do for you, give me a call. Thanks.